seen so far in this lesson, the first part was the physical setting of the whole thing. The physical appearance of the astrologer, how he looked, his face, his turban. Then we saw also the area in which he sat, the town hall park, and also the place in the evening, how it appeared, with all the lights of the different vendors, and the shadows crisscrossing. So that was the physical, in a way, setting of the astrologer. And also we came to know that he knew nothing of astrology, though he took up that profession out of sheer necessity, because he had to run away from his village. Then we saw a bit of his background. He was basically from a farming family, but he had to go away. Then we also saw how he developed his skills, his ability to perceive what was happening because of his practical experience, as well as a shrewd methodology of making a person speak, listening well, and then answering. And the common things that he would say to impress his customers. Now let's go on from page 4, the paragraph there. The nuts vendor blew out his flare and rose to go home. This was a signal for the astrologer to bundle up too, since it left him in darkness except for a little shaft of green light which strayed in from somewhere and touched the ground before him. He picked up his cowrie shells and paraphernalia and was putting them back into his bag when the green shaft of light was blotted out. He looked up and saw a man standing before him. He sensed a possible client and said, "You look so careworn. It will do you good to sit down for a while and chat with me." The other grumbled some reply vaguely. The astrologer pressed his invitation, whereupon the other thrust his palm under his nose, saying, "You call yourself an astrologer?" The astrologer felt challenged and said, tilting the other's palm towards the green shaft of light, "Yours is a nature." "Oh, stop that," the other said. "Tell me something worthwhile." Our friend felt piqued. "I charge only 3 pies per question, and what you get ought to be good enough for your money." At this, the other withdrew his arm, took out an anna, and flung it out to him, saying, "I have some questions to ask. If I prove you are bluffing, you must return that anna to me with interest. If you find my answers satisfactory, will you give me 5 rupees? No. Or will you give me 8 annas? All right. Provided you give me twice as much if you are wrong," said the stranger. This pact was accepted after a little further argument. The astrologer sent up a prayer to heaven as the other lit his cheroot. The astrologer caught a glimpse of his face by the matchlight. There was a pause as cars hooted on the road. Jupka drivers swore at their horses, and the babble of the crowd agitated the semi-darkness of the park. The other sat down, sucking his cheroot, puffing out, sat there ruthlessly. The astrologer felt very uncomfortable. "Here, take your anna back. I'm not used to such challenges. It's late for me today," he said, and made preparations to bundle up. The other held his wrist and said, "You can't get out of it now. You dragged me in while I was passing." The astrologer shivered in his grip, and his voice shook and became faint. "Leave me today, I will speak to you tomorrow." The other thrust his palm in his face and said, "Challenge is challenge. Go on." The astrologer proceeded with his throat drying up. There is a woman. Stop, said the other. I don't want all that. Okay, let's do this para first. The nuts vendor blew out his flare and rose to go. This is the storyteller's way of indicating that the day had ended and it was time for him to wrap up. This was a signal for the astrologer to bundle up too, because he had no light of his own, so he would soon be left in darkness, except for a shaft, a little ray of green light which fell on the ground before him. So except for that little green light, everything else was dark. So he picked up his cowrie shells and other paraphernalia. In the beginning of the story, the very second line we read of the astrologer's professional equipment. Another word for the same thing is paraphernalia. Paraphernalia is all the little things that people carry around because they need it for their work or for their profession. So little things which are kept, which one takes in one's bag, that is one's paraphernalia. And was putting in his bag when the green shaft of light was blotted out. Something had come in between that green shaft of light and the astrologer. So he looked up and saw a man standing before him. So he saw here a possible client. Since the man was standing in front of him there, he felt there's a chance of earning some money. So he starts his professional talk. You look so careworn, you're worried, you look very worried. Careworn, worried. So it'll do you good if you settle to alight with me and chat. So the other man scoffed at him and said, you call yourself an astrologer, so I'm only making fun of him. The astrologer felt challenged, and so tilting the man's palm towards the green shaft of light, pretending to be able to read it, he said, yours is a nature, oh stop that. So the man again told him to stop that about telling him what his nature was. Tell me something worthwhile, he says. Our friend felt piqued. Here piqued means challenged in a way. It means a little angry also, and ready to take up the challenge that was set before him. Piqued has other meanings also. To pique also when one's piqued, one's curiosity may be aroused. Pique can also be a little annoyed. So there are different meanings for pique, but here it means in a way more challenged, a little angry and therefore ready to take up the challenge. So our friend felt piqued. I charge only 3 pies per question, which is very, very little. And what you get ought to be good enough for your money. So I said, for 3 pies, don't expect anything very great. At this, the other withdrew his palm, took out an anna, and threw it at him, saying, I have some questions to ask. So he threw that anna. Flung means threw. So he threw the anna at the astrologer and said, I have some questions to ask. If I prove you are bluffing means telling me lies, not the truth, you must return that anna to me with interest. You'll have to give me more. The astrologer was no less. He says, if you find my answer satisfactory, will you give me 5 rupees? No. Or will you give me 8 annas? All right. Provided you give me twice as much if you are wrong. So you see the jump from 5 rupees, he jumps down to half a rupee. 8 annas was half a rupee. So that's how he bargains. So but we must give me twice as much if you are wrong, said the stranger. So this pact, this agreement was accepted after a little further argument. So they still haggled over it, arguing this way and that, and finally that was agreed upon. The astrologer sent a prayer to heaven as the other lit his chariot. So while the other was lighting his chariot, the astrologer prayed to heaven to save him. The astrologer caught a glimpse of his face by the matchlight. So he noticed the stranger's face as the stranger was lighting his chariot. This is important. There was a pause as cars hooted on the road. So the noise of cars. Jutka drivers swore at their horses, telling them to move faster and all that. And the babble of the crowd agitated the semi-darkness of the park. So what made the semi-darkness a little more alive, a little more in a way important and effective? the noise of the cars, the noise of the Jutta drivers, and the semi-darkness. All this made the darkness and the semi-darkness more, in a way, telling, more effective. So the other sat down, sucking his cheroot, puffing out, and sat there ruthlessly. Ruthlessly means angrily in a way, and having no mercy, like firm, determined, with no compassion. The astrologer felt very uncomfortable. What had the astrologer seen before he felt uncomfortable? He had seen the face of this stranger, and therefore he felt now very uncomfortable. We shall see why. The other held out his wrist. The astrologer felt very uncomfortable. Here, take your Anna back. I'm not used to challenges. I'm not here for challenges. So take your Anna, let me go. The man held his wrist and said, you can't get out of it. You can't go away now. You called me. You dragged me into this. Now you can't go away. So leave me today. Tomorrow I will tell you, he said. No. And the fellow held his palm and said, you have to tell me now. A challenge is a challenge. You have to go on. The astrologer proceeded with his throat drying up. When does our throat dry up? When we are very nervous. When we are frightened. That's when our throat dries up. So his throat was drying up. And he starts with his usual thing. There is a woman. Stop, said the other. I don't want all that. So we see how in actual way, in the real reality, how the astrologer proceeds with his trade. How he finds customers. He looks at his face, sees that he's careworn, tries to convince him that talking to him will help him. And then, of course, he proceeds with his way of proceeding. But here he's got a different customer, and he has seen the face of this customer, which has made him very nervous and anxious. Otherwise, he used to be quite confident telling people things, but here he's got a different customer, and he's become a little nervous. So, I don't want all that. Shall I succeed in my present search or not? That is the question this stranger is asking. He's got a search and he wants to know whether he will succeed. Answer this and go. Otherwise, I will not let you go till you disgorge all your coins. The astrologer muttered a few incantations and replied, all right, I will speak. But will you give me a rupee if what I say is convincing? Otherwise, I will not open my mouth and you may do what you like. After a good deal of haggling, the other agreed. Haggling again is bargaining, saying so much, not more, not less, more, all that. The astrologer said, now the astrologer starts his real talk. You were left for dead. Am I right? Tell me more. A knife has passed through you once, said the astrologer. Good fellow. He bared his chest to show the scar. What else? And then you were pushed into a well nearby in the field. You were left for dead. I should have been dead if some passerby had not chanced to peep into the well, exclaimed the other, overwhelmed by enthusiasm. When shall I get him? He asked, clenching his fist. In the next world, answered the astrologer. He died 4 months ago in a far-off town. You will never see any more of him. The other groaned on hearing it. The astrologer proceeded. Guru Nayak, you know my name, the other said, taken aback. As I know all other things, Guru Nayak, listen carefully to what I have to say. Your village is 2 days' journey due north of this town. Take the next train and be gone. I see once again great danger to your life if you go from home. He took out a pinch of sacred ash and held it to him. Rub it on your forehead and go home. Never travel southward again, and you will live to be 100. Why should I leave home again? The other said reflectively. I was only going away now and then to look for him and to choke out his life if I met him. He shook his head regretfully. He has escaped my hands. I hope at least he died as he deserved. Yes, said the astrologer. He was crushed under a lorry. The other looked gratified to hear it. Let me explain this part now. So the astrologer had started his story about a woman and about his nature and all that, and about a woman too. And he said, stop. Then he told the astrologer, I will not let you go till you tell me if I succeed in my present search or not. I will not let you go till you disgorge all your coins. Disgorge means empty your bag. Whatever coins you have to have in your bag, you have to disgorge. It means empty all that. So disgorge means surrender and empty it. Here in this case, disgorge all your coins, give them to me. Now the astrologer knew that this man was serious, and he had also seen his face. So he was nervous. All right, I will speak. Before saying started, he said a few mantras or a few sentences which were quite unintelligible to the person who came there, the stranger. So after saying a few things, he started. But remember, the astrologer had seen the person's face. So he said, he tells the stranger, if I tell you if your face is convincing, will you give me one more? Will you give me a rupee also? What was that? After a good deal, he said, okay. Then he said that he came down to half a rupee, to 8 times. So he tells him, you were left for dead. So he tells him the first thing that you were left for dead. Then he goes on and says that a knife has passed through you once. So the astrologer is now telling him something from his life, which had actually happened to the stranger. So now the stranger is convinced, and he tells the astrologer to go on. Then when he tells him that the knife had gone through him, he shows him the scar of that knife wound. And then the astrologer tells him, you were pushed into a well nearby and left for dead. That was sure conviction. The stranger was convinced of what the astrologer was telling him. And he asked, I would have been dead if someone had not seen me and I was saved. Then he says, now tell me one more thing. When will I get at him? When will I be able to meet him and kill him, of course? So when shall I get at him? The astrologer says, in the next world. So he makes the stranger forget about trying to get that person, search for him, and kill him. See, the astrologer has very wisely said that. We'll come to know later. So he says, you meet him only in the next world. You will never see him. Now the stranger was disappointed, groaned, to utter a cry of sadness or pain, that is groaning. On hearing that, he was disappointed. Why was he disappointed? Because he could kill him himself. He could take his revenge. Guru Nayak, finally, the astrologer, shows him that he even knows his name. Of course, he's trying to say that it all was through his knowledge, through his skill at astrology. But actually, we come to know how he knew all that. You know my name? The other said, taken aback. As I know all other things, Guru Nayak. Listen carefully to what I have to say. Then he tells him to listen carefully, because if you go out of your home, you will be in very, very great danger. So that will listen carefully. Then he tells him how far his village also is. Your village is 2 days journey north. So tell him, go there. And if you come out of your house, of your home, your life will be in great, great danger. So he convinces that person not to leave his village, not to go out from there. So then the stranger tells him, why should I go? I was hunting for the person to kill him. Each time I came out, I went to a different place to see if I could find him hiding anywhere. So why should I leave home again? I was only going to meet them, to get that person and choke out his life, to strangle him, to squeeze his neck and kill him. Then he shook his head regretfully. Why was he regretful? That he couldn't get a chance to do that. He has escaped my hands. Then he said, I hope at least he got a death which he deserved. Then the astrologer said, yes, yes. He wants to convince him and reassure him that he got the death which he deserved. At least revenge was taken in some other way. so that the desire for revenge also went away from this stranger. He was crushed under a lorry. So that's what this person who killed you, he was crushed under a lorry. So what he wanted to do, crush the life out of him, has happened through a lorry. Now the stranger felt gratified. Gratified in a way means reassured or satisfied that somehow that man died the way he deserved. The place was deserted by this time. So by this time, all had gone, the ground cellar also had gone, everyone had gone, and the place was in complete darkness. So the astrologer picked up his articles and put them in his bag. The green shaft also was gone, leaving the place in darkness and silence. The stranger had gone off into the night after giving the astrologer a handful of coins. So the stranger also moved on. He threw a few handful of coins to the astrologer and also went off. Thank you. We'll stop here for today. I'll continue in the next class.